Hello Cloud Gurus, and in this lecture we're going to look at Lambda. So Lambda is a new service. It has just been launched by AWS at reInvent 2014, and at the time of recording this is in beta or preview version only. I have requested access but I have not yet been granted it, so we're just going to talk about it on a high level, basically a high level point of view, and what questions may or may not come up in the exam about it. But as we move into 2015 and it becomes more mainstream and everyone can access it, then I will update this course with additional practical lectures on Lambda. So what is Lambda? AWS Lambda is a compute service that runs your code in response to events and automatically manages the underlying compute resources. So basically you don't have to worry about server infrastructure. All you have to worry about is code, and you can design your code to respond automatically to events, and we'll look at what sort of different events that those are. But AWS Lambda can automatically run code in response to modification to objects in Amazon S3 buckets, messages arriving in Amazon Kinesis streams, or tables updated in Amazon DynamoDB. So again, what actually is it? Well, effectively it's a new abstraction layer, and if we look at the way in which you look at IT today, you basically start with data centers, then you've got your racks which are filled with your hardware, so you've got your switching infrastructure, your routers, you've got your hypervisors, you've got your SAN, etc. You've got all your networking components, and then inside the actual service themselves you've got your assembly code, so your machine code, and then your higher level languages which form your operating systems, and then in your operating systems you can install the AWS APIs or the command line interface, which you can then use to call different things like S3, for example. So that's a new abstraction layer, and on top of all this you've got Lambda. So it's entirely basically think of it as being able to run code without having to worry about infrastructure whatsoever. It's almost like stateless computing. So Lambda runs your code on highly available compute infrastructure and performs all of the administration of the compute resources, including server and operating system maintenance, capacity provisioning and automatic scaling, code and security deployment, and code monitoring and logging. All you need to do is supply the code. So a lot of people, often still don't quite get what Lambda is, but Lambda is just a service to run code on, and you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about maintenance, you don't have to worry about capacity provisioning, scaling, how you do security patching for that environment. AWS manage it all. All you have to do is supply the code, and the code can respond to particular events. So what events trigger Lambda? You can use AWS's Lambda to respond to table updates in Amazon DynamoDB, modification to objects in S3 buckets, messages arriving in a Kinesis stream, API calls, etc. So, for example, a user could upload a series of files to an S3 bucket. That could trigger a Lambda event, and you want to take those files and spin up some application servers to effectively do some work on those files. So Lambda will then trigger these application servers. It will add some more EC2 instances. It can then automatically copy those files from your S3 bucket to those instances so they can start working on them. Perhaps those instances need to add a watermark to the files that somebody's uploaded, so that's what those instances will do. And then once it's finished, Lambda can then move the code into a completely new S3 bucket, and you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. All you need to worry about is coding it so that it meets your business process. So in terms of Lambda, the questions that will most likely come up in the exam are very high level questions. So what is the supported programming language for it? It's JavaScript. What's the availability? So it's 99.99% for both the service itself and for the functions that it operates. And then typically you're going to be looking at pricing. So pricing is broken down into two bits. If we start with requests, you get your first 1 million requests are free to the Lambda service, and then you're paying 20 cents per 1 million requests thereafter. The other component that makes up the price is not just request, but it's also duration. And duration is calculated from the time your code begins executing until it returns or otherwise terminates. And it's rounded up to the nearest 100 milliseconds. So remember that, because that is definitely probably be a likely candidate for an exam question. The price depends on the amount of memory you allocate to your function. So you're charged 0.00001667 cents per every gig second used, and might take a little bit of time to wrap your head around that, so we do have a pricing example in a couple of slides from now. But in terms of your free tier, you get 1 million free requests per month and 400,000 gig seconds of compute time per month. So the memory size you choose for your Lambda functions determines how much they can run in the free tier. The Lambda free tier does not automatically expire at the end of your 12 months AWS free term tier, but is available to both existing and new AWS customers indefinitely, which is pretty cool. So here's your different memory sizes. So if we have a look at, you've got 128 gigs, and this will tell you the number of free tier seconds per month. You can look at 512 megs of RAM. So it starts at 128 megs and it goes all the way up to 1 gig, and then the pricing varies accordingly. So if we use an example of 1 gig, we'll just move on. Well, actually, okay, let's use half a gig. So if you allocate half a gig of memory to your function and execute it 3 million times in 1 month, and it ran for 1 second each time, your charges would be as followed. Okay, so basically the monthly compute cost is 0.4 zeros and then 1667 per gig seconds, and free tier provides 400,000 gig seconds free. So basically the amount that you've used is 3 million, so that's 3 million seconds. The total compute, so we're taking 3 million seconds, so we just need to convert this down to gigs. So 512 divided by 1024 times that by 3 million, and that gives you 1,500 gigabit seconds. And then your total compute minus your free tier compute is equal to the monthly billable compute. So what we want to do is we want to take the 1,500 gigabyte seconds and minus your free tier from it. So that means you're only going to be charged for 1,100,000 gigabit seconds. And so your monthly compute charge is going to be exactly that, 1,100 times the 4 zeros, 1667. And that's just a quick pricing example for Lambda. So I hope to update this course later on in 2015 with more practical examples. I think the key things to remember is just the availability of Lambda, how it's priced, and that should really be it for now. But if you do find that it comes up in the exam more, please let me know and I'll add additional sections to the course to cover it off. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please let me know.